Yesterday was World Health Day, so we're going to do a World Health Day special in commemoration of how the whole world has been thinking about health. Well, they did yesterday. What? You didn't? You didn't know about it? How can that be? Anyway, what if your personal health isn't just about this body, this shell? What if it also involves and is tied to the health of the planet, animals, and ecosystems around you? We're going to be talking about that and a lot more coming up right after this. Welcome, everybody. This is a Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast, restoring vitality to you and the planet. I'm your co-host, Scott Patton, and joining us as usual, health engineer Martin Patella. Hey, Martin, happy World Health Day, +1.
WEF. It's a slight change of one single letter. World Economic Forum is in charge of WHO, of World Health Organization, and it's an interesting world, right? Like when you hand control of your life to a committee, your individuality suffers.
Yeah.
It's the anthill thinking. It's the beehive thinking. It's, in a beehive, all the bees are sisters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The queen is the mom.
And there's no brothers.
The drone, the one who made it, impregnated the bee, the queen, that keeps giving birth to the same sisters. Anyway, that's a beehive, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, the family is very tightly knit. Oh, anyway, why the heck am I sidebarring into that? Well, the beehive mentality is when you have a committee thinking going on, where individuality is made either obsolete or subservient to the collective. I grew up in one of those societies,
Right. Czechoslovakia behind the Iron Curtain.
Yes, sir.
So tell us a little bit about that, Martin.
Well, you learn to know that something that we all say to one another in the official public is a lie. I know it's a lie. The person who's hearing me say it knows it's a lie. They know that I know it's a lie. It's a full understanding, and yet we say it in the official communication. And then there's the unofficial communication, which you can enter into with people that you trust, but you don't know if you can. Like I remember I was at university, so we were like 22, 23 years old. And one of the band members, I was playing music with good men, good people, and we were all a bit renegade-ish. We liked the Western stuff, the forbidden fruit. We listened to the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and such. And anyway, so he came and said, I have a conundrum. I was visited by the STB, State Secret Police, and they are asking me to just sit down with them from time to time and tell them what I see. I am at a conundrum. If I tell them no, they see me as a refusenik, somebody who's refusing them. If I tell them yes, then I'm compromising my own standards, and I'm going to have to tell them something that's going to be somewhat plausible.
Right. So welcome to the spy world.
Yeah. And so, the exit interview, that they didn't know it was an exit interview, but So, for example, a friend of mine, one of the 7 associates that left together with me, I was one of the 7, had to go have an interview with the dean at the university to get a piece of paper that would allow him to get going. He got that paper because he was an athlete. But then he had to go to the police department in his hometown. They called him in.
Mm.
And so, Mr. J, how's your brother? His brother had emigrated illegally in 1969. So, of course, he's just spinning. Okay, I can't just tell him some bullshit. He'll call me on it. I have to be sounding honest enough. But at the same time, I have to fabricate it and shape it in such a way that he'll whatever, right? So you're shaping the conversation. You know you're lying all the time, somewhat.
And they suspect that you are.
Yeah. But if you lie in a plausible manner, they'll let you get away with it. So that they eventually gave him the paper.
Oh, nice. Huh.
Which, of course, was the ultimate betrayal, because he did betray the dean, who took liking to him because he was a good athlete. And he betrayed the policeman, who took liking to him because he sounded honest enough. And in the end, we left.
Wow.
So
well, this episode, if you haven't guessed already, is going to be ranting against different things in our society today that we see repeated over and over. And the theme of World Health Day is Together for Health, Stand with Science.
Yeah,
more important than ever. Which sounds very much to Martin and I think I can say this for you, Martin, like lie, 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 and believe the lie.
Well, when you say that the science has been settled,
yeah,
which, of course, the thought itself, right? The scientific method says propose a thesis and prove the thesis.
And do it in a way that somebody else can repeat it.
Yeah, replicable. And if anything changes, rerun it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, has not been done for quite a while in certain areas.
It was never done. Like, for example, virology as such assumes and presumes that you're able to isolate the virus. Nobody has ever isolated a virus. It's you cannot do it.
Yeah. So the first thing we want to talk about is, why has trust in science being challenged so much?
Because we now have reports that the journals of medicine, where articles are published, the ones that are supposed to be the supporting pillars of the understanding of the world as we know it, have been now known to be shaped by financial interests, like the famous sugar report, like the famous carbohydrate report, like the famous nicotine and cigarette addiction report, and so on.
My favorite one is palm oil report.
Yeah, sure. So many famous reports that came up that shaped public policy have turned out to be fraudulent.
Or beneficial to a very specific group of companies.
But also untrue.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just that you're, like, I can say things in such a way that I don't say what I don't want you to hear. But I can be still stating facts. Like, Scott, I really like your beard. As opposed to, Scott, you lying bastard, you cheated on me with my girlfriend.
And I like your beard.
And I like your beard. Right?
Yeah. I think that whenever you have massive censorship, then there's two things that happen. One part of the population believes that, that was a good thing that these people were censored because they were totally wrong, and there's nothing you're going to do to change the minds of those people. And then there's a group of people who are like, well, I've just had questions. I don't know why I was being censored. And then there's people that
Right.
are
Yeah.
against it. And then, they're being censored. So when you don't have freedom of expression and freedom of speech, then all of a sudden it's like, what is really going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. You put your finger on it when you are actually punished for asking a question. That's the this emperor's new clothes moment,
Yeah.
right? The innocent child expresses this, but he has no clothes. Whereas the pretentious adult has to say, "Oh, the most
It is the most
sophisticated
beautiful,
fabric.
the
It's so
softest
exquisite."
colors. Yeah. And I think, that really talks to an aspect of the human psychology that people either don't believe or don't want to believe, and that is the ability that we have to be manipulated without even necessarily knowing that we've been manipulated. And
Yeah.
and people say, "Oh, you're just talking." You have the left and the right think you're talking about the left, and the left think you're talking about the right. And the fact is, you're talking about everybody, because you're just in different bubbles and getting different information. Doesn't mean that what you're getting isn't also being manipulative in different ways, right? And so I don't want this to be a left versus right sort of conversation as much as it is that human there are agencies usually with three letters that have been working on how to manipulate populations for decades and decades and decades, and starting well probably well before World War II, but kind of coalesced with World War II. And these people have, and the advertising industry, the people that put ads on TV and on the radio, have been studying this forever. How do we get you to drink Coke, not Pepsi? How do we get you to drink Coke or Pepsi instead of water? How do we get you to eat Big Macs instead of salads? You know, and part of it is physical, part of it is
Yeah.
psychological.
Yeah. Do you remember Super Size Me?
Yes.
It was a movie with Morgan Spurlock, who for 30 days ate at McDonald's all three meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And if they asked him, or if they offered him to, would you like to supersize it? He obliged himself to say yes.
Yeah.
And he obliged himself to eat the whole thing. And during the process, he was being monitored. And at halfway through it, his doctor was urging him to stop this experiment because his liver health was being significantly compromised.
And he was bloating up, like he was
Yeah,
adding weight like crazy.
yeah. Anyway, he carried through 30 days and then stopped. Uh, it's not that long ago he died at age 54 of liver cancer. I don't know if this 30-day experiment that made him very famous was the sole cause, but I'm sure it was a contributor.
Hmm. Well, if nothing else, why aren't people studying it, right? Like, I mean, you see that there's a potential health issue, and we should be talking to our scientists and medical authorities and saying, okay, like, let's do, what sort of studies can we do, and let's do that, let's find out. And we're always talking about that. George says the bill always comes due. Absolutely. And I think that's another reason why people don't trust science, because now, if you're me, your Facebook feed and your X feed and your other feeds are all full of studies that are being done that show how the jab of 5 years ago has caused so many problems in so many people. And 5 years ago, when those people were congregating in, say, Facebook groups to talk about, this is what happened to my son, and this is what happened to my mom, and this is what happened to me, there were hundreds of thousands of people in these different groups, one of which I was a member of. And,
Yeah.
because I wanted to I was concerned. So I thought, well, let's hear what these people are saying. And there was 500,000 plus people in this group, Martin. And
Yeah,
overnight, like one day the group was there, the next day the group was gone. Like it was just
yeah.
deleted. And that happened over and over again. So,
And
of
that was not
course,
the only group. There were groups of
there were
other folks that
group,
were.
yeah, there were many groups.
Yeah.
And it was
Do you
like,
remember
wow,
the injury group?
no,
There was a vaccine injury group also on Facebook where people were posting their stuff and cut.
cut. Yeah. So when you have this censorship going on, you don't censor, like, we don't censor the flat earth people, right? Now, regardless of whether you think it is or it isn't, the general consensus in the world is we're on a ball. So let's pretend that's fact, right? You
Yeah.
don't censor those people because everyone's like, everybody knows it's a fact we're on a globe and it spins. So what happens when they start censoring people who have a contrarian opinion? Well, maybe they do it because it's more truthful than they want to admit,
Yeah.
and that causes this distrust. So when you have scientists and doctors that have 5 years ago said, hey, this isn't right, and all of a sudden um, they're they're in front of the medical committees, they're being blacklisted, they're losing their jobs. It's like, holy smokes, right?
Yeah.
And then what does that impact the other group, then the rest of the group, right? Like, it's a herd. There's a herd of doctors, and now, wow, the guy
Yeah.
over there, he just got slaughtered. I'm going to put my head down and just sort of like ignore everything and hope it blows over, which of course ruins their reputation, right? Because people
Yeah.
go see them,
You know,
they get sick.
I have this favorite quote of mine. It's by Schopenhauer, and he refers to truth. And he says, at first, it's going to be violently opposed, then it's going to be ridiculed, and then it's going to be accepted as self-evident. And that's the thing that we have experienced, right? Like,
Yeah.
we have been gaslighted and ignored and then punished and submitted. But then all of a sudden, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it was only tested for 4 days for safety. What?
yeah.
Oh,
4 days. I mean, just saying it out loud, right?
yeah. And then of course, then we have documents that the companies have put together. Well, we'd want them to be classified for 75 years. Why would you want it to be classified by
I don't
75
want to
years?
be alive when this comes out.
Yeah, and we want everyone else to be dead and forgotten, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And of course, when the Freedom of Information Acts and everything else, and it turns out, like, wow, like they knew this was dangerous. They knew this was bad. Oh, but we have an emergency, which brings us back to the beginning point you made, right? Like, there is a global emergency. You're like, really? You think so? I don't think so. Nobody in Africa had a problem, uh, you know. And I remember actually our world in data. I was going there all the time, right? And Seychelles was the biggest example. It had no COVID deaths, and then they started giving vaccines, and then they had COVID deaths because the vaccine only counts after 2 weeks. So if you die before the 2 weeks, it was probably COVID. And of course, we know that they were marking things as COVID deaths that weren't. You got hit by them. You were on a motorcycle, got hit and died. Well, it's too bad, but we did a test. You had COVID, and then we find out the test doesn't work, and it wasn't supposed to work for that. It just
Boy,
goes
you're
on.
really going strong. Are you trying to get our Facebook account shut off?
No, I'm actually trying to show people the difference between then and now. Then we would have been, probably this live stream would have been taken off the air, right? We definitely would have a bunch of X's against us by Facebook and by YouTube, and that doesn't happen anymore. They don't care anymore that people know about all this stuff, and the only reason I can assume that's the case is that the job has been done. We got enough people jabbed that we wanted to. We found out what we needed to find out, and who knows whether it was a deliberate attempt to murder, genocide people, or if it was an attempt to find out what your DNA was, right? Which is another thing, because they kept sticking stuff up your nose, and having it checked to make sure you didn't have COVID. Well, what else could you get when
What
you
did
stick,
they do with the data?
right?
Yeah.
So, we don't really know. And there's lots, and of course, speculation goes wild, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's they go and they take two Navy hospital ships. They put one very close to the East Coast, one very in New York, and one very close to the West Coast. They're waiting for a catastrophe to happen, right? Then, all these people dying from COVID. Okay, that's the story. Are they gaslighting us? Who knows? What I felt was really interesting was like, because, how do you get everybody, Russia, China, India, Africa, the Western world, South America, doing the same thing? And one of the things that happened at this time, so this is a story, a rumor. I mean, it's part of it is true, but I don't know that it has any impact actually on what happened. But there were two asteroids that were coming very, very close to the Earth in March of 2020, and I'm seeing the astronomy things that they're showing, and I thought, wow, like, and they don't really know where it's going to land if it hits.
Right. Yeah. Actually, one of them, I believe, passed between the Earth and the Moon,
Yeah,
which in cosmic scale, that's bloody close.
yeah. So here's one theory, right? And we'll never know unless the presidents or the kings at the time decide they want to write a book about it and say this is why we did it. But I think the astronauts said, listen, there's these two rocks. If they hit the Earth, it's an extinction event. It'll wipe out half the planet. And we kind of think it won't, but we're not really sure. And because I thought, I was in Colombia, and the Canadian government was like, come home, come home, come home. It's like, why do you want me to
Yeah.
come home, right? Well, if the asteroid hits the planet and there's a massive tidal wave and there's all this catastrophe, they're not going to be able to help me in Colombia, and Colombia is probably not going to care.
Scott, there's a new comment from Alexa. Put it up on the screen.
So is this just a conspiracy show? Not what I thought I signed up for. No.
Alexa, ask us a question. We both are actually fully capable of answering intelligent, thoughtful questions. The thing that got both of us triggered is the lifetime, for me anyway, and the last 6 years that we lived as we lived. So we're just unloading the trauma of our lives onto our audience, seeing just what happens. So,
and it's World Health Day +1. And of course,
Yeah.
World Health Day +1 is, the people that were behind the whole COVID conspiracy thing. And, it's easy. It would be easy for them to prove us wrong, but they don't want to because they can't, I think.
So let me just address the thing called long COVID, which we have plenty of. What's really interesting is that the symptoms of long COVID is really similar to symptoms of Lyme disease, which is another military grade incident that happened 45 years ago in the 80s when the tick-borne disease got out. Anyway, so similar to Lyme disease, which also happens to be very similar or directly overlaid with symptoms that we know as fibromyalgia. It's bizarre. The list of symptoms, when you compare, you cannot tell one from the other. They also call it CME, whatever it is in United Kingdom. And the main point of this exercise is to point out that the major issues in our public health policy seem to be related to public policy, bracket the health within that. So anyway, if you have a health question, I'm delighted to answer it. But what's interesting here now is that public health seems to be an important issue. That's what's on our mind today.
Right. So let's move away from the conspiracies. I think we've done enough of that. Well, and to finish off my story, is nothing happened. It missed. So all of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of temporary hospital beds that they had set up all over the United States, and the 2 boats they had that could have thousands and thousands of people who were, impacted by a planetary extinction event, just all went away and didn't get used, right? And part of the conspiracy theory people say, well, they were expecting a bunch of deaths and they were using this to, prove that a lot of people were dying, and it never happened, and the whole thing was false. So Lyme disease was developed at Plum Island. A Rockefeller facility on Long Island broke out in Connecticut. Thank you, George.
Yep, all that. Well, the way we understand it is that some deer swam across the Narrows from that island onto the mainland, and Lyme, Connecticut was the city nearby, and that's why this illness got the name of Lyme, because it started in Lyme, CT. Scott, we have a hard stop at the top of the hour.
Yep. So we've only got like 4 minutes left. Right. So the one other thing I want us to talk about quickly before we go is the rise of conflicting health advice online, which is one of the things that the World Health Day wanted to combat. And there's always been conflicting health advice, just now it's online more and you see it more. But that, Martin, ties in with metabolic typing, because certain people react differently. People react differently to foods based on their metabolic type. And so this is why the banana diet works for you, and it makes me just feel terrible.
Yes. All right.
Just a quick comment on that.
Advice from experts, and I have. I'm learning as I go. Fortunately, I have been learning for a good while. So the delta between ignorance and knowing what I'm talking about is actually narrowing. So yes, I can tell you that before 2012, when I became a certified metabolic typing advisor, I didn't know about the biological individuality. I understood that it was important. I just didn't know exactly how it worked.
Right.
So yeah, I'm better today than I was 20 years ago.
And this also comes back to trusting the science, right? And why we don't trust the science, because the science will tell you that eggs are bad for you, and then they'll tell you they're good for you, and then they'll tell you the yellow yolk is good for you, and then they'll tell you the white thing isn't good for you, and then they'll tell you you should crush the shells, and then and it goes on, and of course what happens is they do a study of like 1,000 people and they get these results, and then they do a study of another 1,000 people and they get totally different results. So your individuality is incredibly important, and it comes up to you to decide, okay, I know that when I eat a banana, I have a nap an hour later. So that means my body has become more alkaline. I become more sedated and relaxed. So if I want to have a nap in the afternoon, I have a banana. If I want to work in the afternoon, I know I shouldn't have a banana. Whereas Martin, when he has a banana, he road rages and he's bouncing off the walls and he's got energy to kill. So he knows that at 10 o'clock at night, he shouldn't eat a banana. But who's going to tell you that? Nobody's going to tell you that. You have to figure that out for yourself. Metabolic typing is a tool that can help you with that. And it's something we talk about a lot.
And with that, Scott, I'm announcing that we need to shut it down for today.
Right. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific.
And Alexa, if you're still listening, we're not normally this intense. We usually talk about health, and post your questions. We'll answer them.
That's right.
This is a two-way. All
so
right.
you've been watching and listening to the Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast, restoring vitality to you and the planet. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
My body's a temple, but the walls are cracked. Stuck in the rubble of the years I've stacked. Stagnation in my veins like Toxic whispers in the wind, but I gotta rebuild. I must.